Hey everybody, make sure you stay tuned in until the end of the show to hear about our first official giveaway.
Welcome to the Stranger Than Fiction podcast. I'm Chase.
And I'm Adam. Tonight we are talking about I think, pretty interesting topic. I mean, this one you're pretty excited about, right?
Well, I'm excited about a lot of the topics that we've talked about thus far, but this one I believe I can prove to you that this one actually exists and is in effect and everything else. But yes, I am excited about this.
Well, we'll see about prove, but before we get started, I kind of just want to start with a couple questions. So, what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Well, it has to be The Emperor Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi.
Okay, so you go an original trilogy.
The new ones are admirable as well, but the middle ones are just shit.
I mean, I think I agree with you. Empire Strikes Back is definitely probably the best one. I do like Revenge of the Sith, though, as well, in the prequel trilogy.
Well,
but
you're stupid.
Okay. Douche. But anyway, so in Empire Strikes Back, I'm glad you brought that one up. There's a very important scene in that movie, one of the biggest cinematic twists of all time, that closely relates to our topic. So, there's probably like in the middle, 2/3 of the way through, Darth Vader cuts off Luke Skywalker's hand. There's a really loud scream, and Darth Vader utters a line to Luke Skywalker. What do you remember that line to be?
Oh, this is a loaded question, but the line is, "I am your father," right?
Specifically, no. I am your father.
That is correct. I was trying to lend towards the actual line is, yes, no, I am your father. That is correct.
Correct. But people often quote it as, Luke, I am your father.
Including, Mark Hamill has done it on numerous occasions online as well. So it's not just normal people. It is also Luke Skywalker himself. Yeah, so,
again, I brought that up because I thought, I'm a big Star Wars fan. I know you're a pretty big Star Wars fan. And
I am.
Was a nice segue into our topic. So why do people remember that line wrong? Are they just bad at remembering?
Well, I don't know. That's an interesting... I think, yes, people are bad at remembering, but this is a massive amount of people all misremembering the same thing. So I think the bigger question is, how does something that is a small scale misremember, or whatever we choose to call it, become such an accepted, basically wrong thought?
Yeah, so tonight we're talking about something called the Mandela Effect. And basically that term or phrase is a collective misremembering of a fact or an event. So like Chase kind of described, it's pretty widespread. Lots of people believe something or think they remember something that isn't actually true. And the term dates back, was coined in 2009 by a lady named Fiona Broome. She was an author and paranormal consultant and frequent kind of speaker at comic conventions. Essentially, she was at one particular convention called Dragon Con. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one, Dragon Con.
I have not heard of that con, no.
It was in Atlanta this year, so pretty close by me. But it just actually happened this past weekend. But
did you go?
No, I didn't go.
No,
I was preparing for our podcast.
Are there famous dragons there, or what is Dragon Con?
It's just like a science fiction comic convention type thing.
All right.
But anyway, she was at this Dragon Con in 2009, and they were backstage with lots of other speakers and stuff and crew members and talking about various stuff. And basically, someone talked about Nelson Mandela and the fact that they thought he was dead. And all these other people agreed at the time, oh yeah, I thought he was dead too. When in fact, at the time in 2009, he was very alive. Fiona kind of coined this term, the Mandela Effect, and they went on to talk about some other things that, as a group, a lot of people kind of misremembered. So that phrase has kind of come to cover lots of different things, which we'll kind of talk about here a little bit. But yeah, that's the topic tonight.
Yeah, and there's a lot of probably bigger science than what we'll end up talking about behind why that sort of massive scale misremembering happens. And I'm not going to pretend to try to speak to that. I'm more of as you know, and as you've talked about, Adam, I'm more of a conspiracy theorist, or there's something else at play outside of the science of probably what's actually going on. But there is a deep thought on the science of the mind and the psychology of what's going on. But I don't know if you can speak to that, but I definitely can't. Nor do I want to, because that's way less fun.
I mean, I'm not going to talk to some of the science, but I'll probably talk about some stuff that's probably a little more grounded in reality than what you'll probably talk about.
That's good.
So Nelson Mandela was a guy from South Africa. He was a revolutionary and political figure, and he was born in 1918. I'm not going to go into too much detail about him, but basically he was a very important figure in South African history, and he kind of led a rebellion against the South African government, and he was imprisoned in 1962. He spent 27 years in jail. So after he got out in jail in 1990, shortly after, he became president of South Africa. And so, again, very important guy, very against, all kinds of different social injustices and whatnot. Very important, prominent figure. I'm sure everyone out there has heard of him. However, many people have the memory that he died in prison, usually like in the 80s or 90s at some point.
July 23rd, 1983, I believe, is the
date that you remember?
Specified date that everybody thinks that he died in jail. I don't know why I know that, or why I speculate that that's the date, but that's in the 80s is when everybody thinks he died in jail.
Well, if he died in the 80s, obviously he would never have become president of South Africa. But he actually died in 2013. So this kind of Mandela effect was coined, based again on collective misremembering that people have about him.
Yeah. It's weird if you actually go through and read the stories of the misremembering of this, because there are very passionate people that can remember watching Nelson Mandela's funeral in the 80s and can give you details of it. And it's a very strange phenomenon that there's so many things out there that people remember so vividly and so passionately, and that actually never happened. And that funeral in the 80s, whatever they were doing, maybe it was too many drugs or alcohol or something, but there was a massive amount of people that could give you details of his funeral in the 80s, which never happened.
Well, I mean, I've got some kind of thoughts on how that misremembering came up to be, but before we get into some of those kind of explanations, maybe we could touch on a couple of the other common or interesting Mandela Effect items that are kind of out there today. One that is particularly vexing to me, and one that if you were going to convince me that this was real and signs of the stuff that you're probably going to talk about, this could be the one. Okay. There was a children's book and TV show back in the day about a family of bears, right? Yep. The Berenstain bears.
Or the Berenstein bears, whatever multiverse you lived in at the time would have given you one or the other. But yes, the Berenstain bears is what the actual name of the books are.
Correct. So the collective misremembering, or the Mandela effect relative to these guys, is the last kind of three letters in that name. So Berenstein, as in ending in EIN, versus Berenstain ending in AIN. And there's a lot of people, probably me included, that would have kind of sworn up and down that it was Berenstein ending with the EIN, when in fact it is the stain.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes as far. We used to have Berenstein Bears Park in Cedar Point. Do you remember that?
I do not remember that, no.
Or maybe this is my Mandela effect. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a Berenstain Bears Park, or a little part of Cedar Point in Sandusky that had a whole dedicated area, much like Disney, to the Berenstain Bears. And I think that's the most accepted proof or theory with the Mandela effect is the Berenstain versus Berenstain Bears. Because it hits home for so many people, I think, of what the fuck did my childhood consist of? I thought this was Berenstein the whole time, and I'm included. Berenstein Bears was Steen and not Stain in my world, so I don't know where my head was at, but I'm part of the club.
Another one, kind of in that children's story or book or whatever kind of vein, is Curious George.
Huh.
The kind of misremembering with Curious George has to do with his tail or lack thereof. Do you know this one?
I don't think I know this one, no.
Okay, well, we can test you right here.
Okay.
So does Curious George have a tail?
I was just watching Curious George this week with Eleanor, but I didn't fucking pay attention to know if he has a tail. And quite frankly, I have no idea. Since I don't remember him having a tail, I'm going to go with no, he does not have a tail.
You would be correct. He does not have a tail.
Cool.
However, many people would swear up and down that he did. And a nice little story, as Allison and I were researching this, we also recalled that we had a Curious George doll for Oliver. And Allison was like, this doesn't make any sense because, Curious George doesn't have a tail, but this doll has a tail. It has a tail. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And it's an official Curious George doll and it has a tail. And I was like, well, are you sure it actually has a tail? And she's like, yeah, I'll go get it. And she went and found it. And you know what? It did not have a tail on the doll.
What? No, that's not a real story.
It is.
I don't believe your story.
It is a real legit
Hey,
story.
I'm here listening in, and I'll just interject to tell you that it's real, and I'm pissed about it because I was 100% certain, and now I don't know if anything in my life is real.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. This is proof that this is all valid because you guys had a real life experience that's not based on TV or it's not based on the collective thought. You guys legitimately had an experience where you thought one thing and it ended up to be another thing. And
I was, kind of so perplexed by this one. I Googled Curious George, go to images, scroll down page and page and page looking for just one fucking picture of Curious George with a tail.
Yeah, nothing?
Didn't see one. No, didn't see one.
Yeah, see, and that'll fuck your brain, man. I mean, you start to go through, okay, Berenstain versus Berenstain. You can maybe come to terms that you were a child and that, your family has a weird accent maybe and Stain sounds like Steen in your household or something. You can start to come to terms, but then you get all of the rest of these things, which I'm excited to talk about because I know that, and leading with that Curious George thing that you guys just had, that experience that you fortunately have shared with me and the rest of our listening audience makes me excited because the rest of this shit is
very excited right now.
The rest of this shit is so fucked up that I want it definitely is something that it hits so close to home because it makes me go, what the fuck is wrong with my life? What am I? So I'm excited to talk about this stuff.
Another one on the kids kind of stories. Snow White. I think it's Snow White.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, Snow White.
Yeah, let's talk about this one because I definitely have done some research.
So Snow White, there's the evil queen.
Yep.
Right? She has this kind of magical mirror, right? That shows her what's going on in Snow White's world and whatever.
Yep.
And she talks to it, right?
Yep.
So what does she say?
She says, magic mirror on the wall.
She doesn't say mirror, mirror on the wall?
Well, before, let's say, 6 p.m. tonight, I would have said mirror, mirror on the wall. However, in doing my research, and this is one that's existed in my world for a while of the magic mirror versus mirror, mirror. And I have been a team mirror for a very large portion of my Snow White knowledge life. And I wanted to make sure that I had some solid shit to talk to you about. So Eleanor has two different versions of Snow White. There's an extended version and there is a shortened version.
Both the Disney versions are you talking about?
Well, they're different publishers, they're based on the Disney story, but they're two different versions. I mean, one has a lot more detail and is written a little bit differently than the other one. But I checked both of those books before we came down here, just to verify that Magic Mirror was indeed what Magic Mirror on the Wall, who's the fairest of them all, is indeed what the queen or whatever the fuck she is in the movie. Both of the books, written independently of one another, different publishers, different formats and everything else, have Magic Mirror on the wall. No, there's no reference to mirror, mirror. However, in my brain, it is always going to be mirror, mirror.
And probably the brains of many, many other people.
That to me is one of the ones that resonates the most with